welcome to October's Grapevine. I'm Madeline Ravetta from Bright Light NLP. I'm getting used to saying my new name. It still doesn't come naturally to me, but I'm nearly there. This is my monthly dose of bite-sized NLP, suitable for beginners and for those of you with some NLP experience. Looking at those of you who are live online, you've all got some degree of NLP experience, but I know that we've got some absolute beginners watching the replay. So I will be addressing things at different levels to meet the needs of the audience. So I'll introduce this topic in as accessible a way as possible. And even if you're experienced in NLP, I hope that I will offer you some sort of a refresher, maybe a fresh perspective, some new ideas, as well as the opportunity to practice, obviously, and spend time with like-minded people, which I know is one of the biggest benefits that the Grapevine gives, and that is very popular for people. So tonight's topic is reconciling differences, and you'll have seen in the blurb that I sent out beforehand, this was very much influenced by my experience of how polarized a lot of the current issues and recent issues have been, whether it's about COVID and its impact, whether it's Black Lives Matter or Me Too, whether it's entitlement to financial support, even children's school meals. It seems as though so many topics are leading people to take absolutely polarized positions. And I really feel that NLP has a massive role to play in helping people to reconcile differences, and not necessarily to change each other's minds. So tonight we are not going to be discussing the rights and wrongs of any of the different positions where there are different opinions. And in fact, I invite you to be at the extremes and to be okay with other people who might have a completely different view from you. So this is not about persuasion or influence. This is about healing the rifts that are created when differences exist. So the way I'm going to run it tonight, a bit of the welcome, obviously. We'll do very short introductions because we've got 2 or 3 people on the live who've not attended a Zoom Grapevine before, although I think all of you have been on Grapevine, and I don't think you all know each other. So we'll just spend a very brief introduction. Then what I'll do is I'm going to set the context by offering up what I think is some of the really essential kind of groundings of NLP that create a context or a perspective for looking at differences and for looking at reconciliation. And I'll outline a couple of the most useful frames, which I'll use to lead into some practical exercises where you'll get a chance to do some practice. So using the act as if frame and some really helpful NLP questions in that frame that can help to see other perspectives, and also the process of looking at the higher values that are behind any disagreement, the positive intention and the higher values, that can be another way of getting a fresh perspective on other people's points of view. If there's time, I'm also going to lead a guided compassion reflection. It's not strictly NLP, it's something that comes from Hawaiian Huna, but it also has its roots and versions in all of the world's major philosophies and religions. I know those of you who've got any Buddhist training will recognize it as being very similar to the Tonglen meditations. It's very similar to the Christian prayer of humble access, but I'm actually going to use a Hawaiian Huna version if we've got time. If we haven't got time, then I'll share it. I'll maybe record the meditation and share it as a bonus from tonight. And then we'll end the day with some reflections and then we'll close. So I will stop sharing so that we can look at everybody's faces again and just do a very quick run round, a quick introduction. And in particular, if there's anything about tonight's topic that drew you, very briefly, because we've got a lot to get through, and we'll go clockwise around my screen, which means that Valerie, you'll go first.
Oh, hi, my name's Valerie. I am now working as a therapist. I've been for about 3 years. So I do NLP, did NLP to masters. I do hypnotherapy and some other therapies, although I used to be an accountant. This one just appealed to me because I have experienced, well, on social media, feeling irritated at some people's comments and having to unfollow some people. But I've also experienced some rather strange and inexplicable fallouts as well, which have been quite hurtful and damaging and are very difficult to move forward or reconcile under the current circumstances. So it just resonated with me quite a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Valerie. Lovely to see you. Maria, you were next on my screen. You're muted, Maria. Can you just unmute yourself?
Okay, thanks for reminding me there. Hi, Madeline, and also to a number of you on here, because I know, I recognise quite a few faces. So I've trained as an NLP practitioner with Madeline a few years back. I'm still interested to practice and learn more when I can. I was attracted to this particular session because I've been on the back end of some really interesting sort of behaviour that I haven't been able to reconcile because people are not willing to sort of open up and communicate, and that leaves a lot of really sort of difficult situations. It's more around a sort of volunteering perspective that I've been doing some work, and also around you know, just in terms of, you know, the amount of work that I've put into something and the sort of the end result and how I was sort of treated by the you know, by some individuals. So yeah, it's been an interesting sort of time from a point of view of growth and learning, but also in terms of me giving myself a sort of out at 120% and finding that, you know, other people's agendas aren't quite as aligned as I thought they were, and sort of, you know, impact on trust and transparency and values like that. So I've had my values cut across this last week, which has been kind of painful, and just working through it.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you for sharing that, Maria.
Yeah.
I've jiggled up the screen, so we're not going in the same order as before, but never mind, we'll go next. So Michael.
Hi folks, nice to meet you all. I think I know some of you from the Grapevine. I think it's the first time meeting. I've been involved in NLP for the last 4 years. Did my master practitioner in 2018. What drew me to this topic tonight was, it's like how everybody seems to have a difference of opinion, but they keep falling out. Like, even though everything is like, they state things as a fact, whereas just a perception. And it's like getting people to realise that, look, everything's just a perception. You do not have to fall out because you've got two different opinions. It just seems like everybody, right now, what's happening in the world is people are falling out right, left and centre, and just because they're struggling, rather than just listening and acknowledging that person's perception. You do not necessarily have to agree with that person, but you can still listen to their opinion without having to chuck your opinion in, unless they ask for it. And that's where the majority of these fallouts are coming from. So that's what drew me this tonight, to can understand a bit better and so hear everybody else's opinions.
It's a really good point. Thanks, Michael. Nice to see you. I've got Helen next.
Hi, I'm Helen Tulloch, and I practiced my practitioner with Madeline. I started NLP, and you're going to be horrified by this, 8 years ago, Madeline.
Is it 8 years ago, Helen?
Yeah, and
I'm not horrified. I'm proud of you.
Well, that's a bit horrifying that I haven't taken it any further. Anyway, I have really enjoyed NLP for myself. I haven't really done anything with it further than just myself. Tonight's topic didn't really draw me so much as just getting back to being in amongst NLPers, and I haven't congratulated you yet, Madeline, on your nuptials.
Thank you very much.
So exciting.
Yeah.
So I'm quite lucky because I've quite enjoyed lockdown, but I'm scared to admit it to anybody because so many people have really been hurt by it. But it's all my fault, actually, because I visualized and said, please, somebody stop the world for 6 months and let me catch up. And that's what they did. So I need to visualize again and get it all started. Like, I've had my 6 months. You can start it all up again.
Yeah.
So I am carrying that guilt on my shoulders.
That explains everything.
Yeah, the only person I've argued with is Alexa, and the media and radio. And I just, I switched between Radio 4 and Radio Scotland. And I think, what? Where do they get these ideas from? Oh, she's speaking. Alexa, stop.
Brilliant, Helen. How lovely to see you. Thank you. It's brilliant. Yeah, I love that it's all your fault. I think that's hilarious.
Well, I just get angry because I think that every topic that is covered, there is a massive jigsaw, and nobody has got all the pieces. Everybody's just got a little piece here and a little piece there. Nobody's got the edgy bits, and nobody has the full picture. And they just fight over their little bit of the jigsaw. Anyway, that's it.
That's very true. It's very true. So going on round, I've got Nigel next.
Hi, so yeah, I was drawn to this partly through something I've been doing with some colleagues. I'm a nutritional therapist and also trained in NLP a couple of years back, and kind of incorporating that into what I do, which I think is really useful. And so one of the things I've been doing with some colleagues, there became a bit of a difference of opinion in how we kind of move things forward, and someone's gone and we're just kind of reforming and shaping and things. And so I kind of thought this would be quite topical for that, and what I can bring to that and kind of refresh and things. And as people said, there's all this weird stuff going on in the world, and people with their own little viewpoints, and how you navigate that, and what's coming around the corner probably in the next year is hugely divisive as I see it, which is that little I word. And it never fails to amaze me sometimes how people's views just pop out unexpectedly, and it's like, so how do I deal with that? In a way of not creating that divisiveness. And the B word that we've just gone through as well is another thing which is hugely divisive and unhelpful, and we don't need it really. But people have their own views, and we can't change that. We can just try and manage our way and navigate and smooth the pathway, I guess. So it's really just trying to pick some bones out of it and see what I can stick in my pocket and use for later on, hopefully. And at the moment,
yeah, just see where it goes.
Yeah.
And in the centre of my screen, I have Emma. Hello.
Yeah, hi. I redid the diploma in NLP earlier this summer, which was really good, and I have really been enjoying coming to Grapevine. I suppose with this topic, I've always had strong political views, and sometimes people with the opposite view I find difficult. How am I going to be friends with this person when I feel so passionately the opposite from you? I have a friend like that at the moment, so we're just not going there on the political stuff. So that was the reason, but also I go back to work on Monday because furlough's finished, and so I don't know if I'm going to be able to make more Grapevine, so I thought it was really important to come tonight. Unfortunately, I have to go and can't stay the whole lot, but there we go.
We'll see you for quite a good chunk of it.
Yes.
Lovely to see you. I can really empathise with so much of what so many of you said, and I don't have the answers. So if you've come hoping for the answers, I'm afraid. But what led to this evening was really exactly what Nigel was saying, that so many polarizing issues, and I was drawing graphics for all of them, for, like, as you say, the I word, the B word, and I ended up with this one, which, because I actually heard two friends say the exact same sentence. One friend said, "Not wearing a mask is stupid and dangerous." And another friend said, "Wearing a mask is stupid and dangerous." And my heart almost broke, because I'm not going to argue right or wrong or which side I fall onto. What happens is that, and I think it was Helen said, nobody's got the whole picture. So we're all making our judgments as if they're fact, but when we've only got 3 of the jigsaw pieces. But what no one seems to have noticed is that it's a 1,000-piece jigsaw. And so we act as if our 3 pieces are the whole story. And yet at heart, it's those 2 words in the middle, stupid and dangerous, that they've got in, there's fear in there, that dangerous, there's fear. And there's also the need to be right. So if I call other people stupid, it somehow makes me clever and right. And that point that I think it was Michael also said, that people are falling out over opposing views in a way that I haven't seen in my lifetime before. People have been able to be friends and come from opposite ends of the political spectrum, for example, and they've been able to disagree but not fall out. And yet it now seems to me as though there's such a rise in intolerance, and it's even landed in basic discussion. So I was in a Facebook discussion yesterday where a woman basically posted simply, she said, oh, I invited someone to a meeting on Zoom and she didn't turn up and she didn't let me know that she wasn't coming. What do you think of that? And the comments were full of vitriol. They were saying that she's just rude, she's unprofessional, it's unacceptable. And I was really, really uncomfortable with the level of hatred and insults and that anger. And so I typed in and asked, like I said, I feel that some of these comments are a bit harsh. You know, we don't know what was going on for that woman, why she couldn't turn up. To which the original poster replied, oh, she got in touch with me afterwards and apparently she decided to sit with her sick mother. But she admitted it wasn't an emergency, so it was still rude not to let me know. And I was appalled. I'll be honest, I felt there was no compassion, no kindness, no attempt even to see it from the other woman's point of view. And I think that in the past, we would have made allowances. Yes, it does seem a bit rude to not let someone know if you're not coming to a meeting, but also we know there's 1,000,001 other demands on our time. And I think we might have, especially for a sick mother, we might have been a lot more tolerant. And yet now it seems as though if someone doesn't match your expectations, it's like the whole person is invalidated. So one of the first things that I think is really important from NLP is that we come from a place of love. We come from a place that says we're all human beings, we're all flawed, and I would expect the same. I would expect people to be compassionate for my failings, and in return I will be compassionate for other people's failings, because none of us are perfect. And I think from a place of love, one of the things that's very much listening, again, I think it was Nigel who talked about, people aren't, listening to each other. Respect. You don't have to agree with someone else's point of view, but we absolutely can respect their right to hold it, and that for them it's a valid point of view. Kindness, compassion, care, tolerance, even all of these sorts of things. I think NLP gives us a platform for holding these in mind. And so where I'm going to start tonight is to look at some of the most basic level resources that NLP gives us that enables us to practice compassion and kindness and tolerance and respect, even when there are fundamental differences of view and opinion. And so the first NLP tool I'm going to look at is kind of what most of us learn about on day one, which is the beliefs of excellence, sometimes called the NLP presuppositions or the NLP axioms. I'm just going to hold a minute. I'm seeing a chat, just make sure I've seen. That's okay. Yeah. Sorry, I've just managed to cover my screen with the chat screen and now I can't see what I'm doing. There we are, that's better. Okay. So the first, I'm not going to go through all of them, but if you're a beginner or new to NLP, these NLP beliefs of excellence are short statements that people who apply these in their life consistently have more fulfilling lives, even if you don't believe it to be true, if you use it as a framework for looking at the world. And there are several of them, and I've just chosen 4 of them in relation to tonight's topic. So this is the first one that I wanted to look at, and it really echoes what I think all of you said in your introductions. Everyone lives in their own model of the world. Your reality is unique to you, your values, your experience, how you perceive the world. Your truth is your truth. It isn't the truth. We've all only got our own bits of the jigsaw. We can't even see the edges of the jigsaw. We can't even see someone else's bits of the jigsaw. And everybody else sees things differently from their perspective, through their experiences, and they'll take different conclusions, even from the same event. Like, we've all been in this Zoom meeting tonight, but every one of us will have experienced it differently. And if we go away and tell other people about our experience, an outsider might think we were in, you know, 7 different meetings. They might not even recognize that my version has any relationship to Valerie's version, for example. It's probably the first big lesson that most of us learn and need to be reminded of on a regular basis. And because different things matter to different people, this is also where fear comes in. Fear comes from not accepting that, and from wishing to, or futilely trying to mold the world, the exterior world, to fit your own expectations, because we fear difference. And one way that people think they can control their fear is to control the outside world. Unfortunately, that's always going to be futile, because you can't control anybody or anything except for yourself. And even that we're not brilliant at, which is another reason why I said at the beginning, you know, we're not going to discuss our different points of view. If somebody else has offended you or upset you, we're not going to think about what can they do differently, because those people aren't in the room. They're not with us tonight. We can't change them. We're totally going to turn inwards and say, it's what I can do.
Madeline, can I just say also on that one, that's particularly apt at the moment, because everybody's model of their own world has suddenly turned upside down. So everybody's not just dealing with other people's map of the world or the model of the world, they're also trying to define and survive their own model that has just gone crazy. Absolutely.
And their own model, they often want to get back to their old model of the world, and it's probably never going to happen. And again, it's that futile desire to control the exterior world that's actually impossible. We can't do it. And being doomed to failure, then fear begets more fear, and that begets frustration, which begets anger, and so on, in, you know, to hatred, and into this escalating spiral, which, you know, which we've seen. On the flip side, reconciliation comes from accepting that everybody lives in a different model of the world, and that everybody else's model of the world is valid for them. And therefore it's not, and letting go of the desire or the need to control or change anybody else's model of the world, because it ain't ever going to happen. And other people are in pain, other people are struggling, but it isn't, we can't ever change that. We cannot fix other people. The only thing we can do is to fix ourselves. And that's one of the biggest things. That it's a tough lesson that NLP teaches, but that it all begins and ends, frankly, inside ourselves. And I do think that this one, everyone lives in their own model of the world. I live in my own model of the world, and it's my only function, and my only capability is to address me and my model of the world. So the next one that I picked out is this one, which again sometimes people find difficult to take on board, that it's always possible to find a positive intention behind all behavior. So even when you perceive that someone is doing a bad thing or a wrong thing, if you can use this belief, then you can begin at some level to recognize that they had a reason or a positive intention. That doesn't mean good in judgmental terms. It doesn't mean like anything like kind or beneficial, and it certainly doesn't necessarily mean a positive intention towards you. Again, it's always, everything is through self. What it means is that they had a reason for doing what they did in a way that makes sense in their model of the world in that moment. And with this axiom in mind, you can even begin to understand possible reasons. We'll never know someone's actual reasons, but possible reasons behind even the most hurtful, damaging, bizarre, weird, frightening, dangerous behaviors. We can find some reason behind it. Those of you who've done NLP with me will know I nearly always use examples of things like theft, rape, murder, to and say what, explain how there might be a positive intention even behind someone who commits a murder, that person had some higher intention that made that action their best choice in that moment. And I'm not in any way judging that there's anything positive about a murder. That's not what I'm saying. It's saying that somewhere behind it. And I think that for tonight, I didn't want to kind of go over those. I want those examples to explain this, but to look at things like those two mask, wearing a mask or not wearing a mask is stupid and dangerous. Looking at those two women that I heard both saying more or less the identical same sentence, maybe each of them, their positive intention is a need to be right in a world where it's so hard to know what's right. And so if they assert their view, the louder they shout it, and the louder they say that other people are stupid and dangerous, the more it gives them the comfort that they're right and not stupid and not dangerous. They're clever and safe. And we all want to be clever and safe, basically. That could be a positive intention for both of them, but it's expressed in different behaviors. So especially in a world where, as Michael was saying, the data and the evidence is so difficult to follow, is unclear, it changes, depends who you're talking to, depends what day of the week it is, or which newspaper you're reading. People, maybe they're saying that because they need some form of certainty to cling on to. And therefore express fear of other people who might destabilize their own reality. So just remembering that even when people are getting into that conflict, they have a positive intention, which at the very basic level, especially if you think about Maslow's hierarchy of human needs, many of us have dropped down the pyramid down into the basic levels, safety, food on the table, warmth. People are struggling to feed their children and to pay their gas bills. And that's something that a year ago, those same people didn't have to worry about. So their positive intention is right back into the caveman primitive defensive behavior. It's not surprising. Just related to that, people make the best choices available to them at the time. A lot of us can look back and regret a choice we made, but I find it's really comforting to remember that at that moment, with everything that was going on, with all our resources, knowledge, experience, skills, we did the best we could with what we had. And so is everybody else. So if somebody else is suffering and making apparently poor choices, they're still doing the best they can with what they've got. If other people are denying that there's even a problem, they're doing the best they can with what they've got. If other people are arguing with you, they're doing the best they can with what they've got. And I think that's really important to remember. I'll tell you another true story. Two mothers that I know who have families of 3 children. And one of the children in both families has recently gone to university. And within a week of arriving at university, both those children got COVID. So 2 mothers again, in the same week, the first one said to me, I drove straight down to Plymouth, which was 400 miles for her. I drove straight down to Plymouth and I fetched her home so that I could take care of her like every loving mother would. And the other mum said to me, no, when I heard he'd got COVID, no matter how much it hurts me that I can't go and care for him when he's sick, I've stayed away from him because of my other children, like every loving mother would. And my heart almost broke, because who's to say what's right or wrong? Each of them are doing the best choices available to them at the time. And I think it really illustrates that there's a positive intention, the same positive intention as well, but leading to a completely polar opposite choice. And who am I to say what's right? Because everyone makes the best choices available to them. The last one I think is important to remember is that the identity of a person, who they are, is separate from the behavior they demonstrate. Or as my dad used to say, you can hate the sin, but love the sinner. And I think this has got lost. It really has, because now people equate a behavior with the person and they're writing each other off. If they have a disagreement, it's like, I can't be friends with you because of this one thing you do. I don't consider you as a valid human being anymore because of this one thing you do. Instead of going, I don't agree with that thing, but I still love you as a person. I've seen, I think it was Nigel who raised the I word. I've seen brothers who've farmed together for 50 years and they haven't talked to each other for the last 4 years because they're on different sides of one of the independence debates. I've watched strangers hurling abuse at people over whether they were entitled to financial support. I've been called more hurtful words than I can imagine because I happen to raise a point that I feel hard done by not getting any limited company director support and watching other people getting financial grants. And I didn't think anyone would insult me as a person when I raised a fact that I wasn't entitled to any support. And it's just so interesting. We're lacking this. It reminds me of that quote, I don't share your opinion, but I'll defend to the death your right to hold it. Like, well, why can't we go back to those days? It's okay to disagree. Moreover, it's actually healthy at times to disagree. So what can we do instead? The first of the NLP tools, if you like, and to be honest, I had enough material for like a 10-day seminar on this topic. And so I had to really narrow down. So I went for the 4 beliefs of excellence that I picked out just there. And now this is the next, like an actual tool or a process. And it's about NLP's gift to us about understanding that we can manage our state. So if you think about it, when you're faced with a significant difference in opinion, your body doesn't know the difference between an attack on your opinion and an attack on you as a person. So you go into defense mode, all of your self-defense hormones get released, the adrenaline and so on, and you act with anger, fear, and defensiveness to protect yourself. And we know that all of those hormones, physiologically, they narrow down your brain power and your physical. So have you ever heard, I was sick with anger? You are literally sick. We're making ourselves sick by disagreeing or feeling as though our truths have been violated or wishing that other people would think differently. We're making ourselves sick because physiologically our body responds as though we're in a physical threat. And what NLP does is it says state manage your state, choose a resourceful state. And the resourceful state I'm going to offer you is curiosity. Be curious instead of fearful or defensive. Physiologically, instead of the damaging hormones that are released in fear and anger, Curiosity releases the healthy hormones, including serotonin and dopamine and the love hormones. And so instead of closing down and going into fight or flight, your neural networks open up, creating more choice and more opportunity. By definition, the whole I'm right, you're wrong is the opposite of curiosity. So, for example, saying, oh, well, that other person is to blame, or that other person made the wrong decision, or that other person judged, that's the opposite of curiosity, because we're imagining that we know what's going on for them, and we don't. Whereas curiosity, that leads to a brilliant NLP question, which says, I don't know what's going on for them, so what would have to be true for them to behave that way? And it starts from that presupposition that their behavior is valid, that it's not flawed. It's only flawed from our perspective, but our perspective is irrelevant. From their perspective, it's valid behavior. So curiosity physically creates a much more resourceful state and a much more healthful state, and intellectually enables you to be open to their map of the world. What would have to be true for that person to behave that way? So what would have to be true for one mother to drive and fetch their COVID suffering child home, even though they've got other children at home? What would have to be true for another mother to leave their COVID suffering child to get on with it and look after themselves and stay at home with their other children? You know, what would have to be true? Because clearly they have different realities, even though they've got a common higher value of being a loving mother. So what would have to be true? And it's about them. It's not my judgment of what's right and wrong. When we practice this shortly, we'll go into a practice probably in about 10 minutes time. This is a great one if somebody has hurt you, argued with you, holds an opposing opinion that you just can't reconcile, and you're never going to change their mind. Remember, tonight I've said this is not about trying to argue, influence, or change other people's minds, because I don't want to hit my head against a brick wall any longer. If you want to do that, go do it somewhere else. That's not for tonight. This is about acceptance, tolerance, and respect, and acknowledging differences and reconciling the relationship whilst allowing the differences to continue. So if this is so if you've got somebody who's hurt you or who's offended you, argued with you, holding an opposite view, something like that, and you're probably never going to resolve the topic, but you do want to heal the relationship, this might be a great exercise to do, which is about stepping into their shoes and exploring what would have to be true for them to have done what they did. If you think about my example earlier about the woman who didn't show up at the meeting, so I asked what would have to be true for her not to show up, and what would have to be true for her not to tell the person she wasn't coming. And that's how they discovered, for example, that she was sitting with her sick mother, and suddenly it changes the perspective. The same behavior takes on a different meaning. All sorts of other possibilities might arise, and as soon as you're aware that there's more than one possible explanation for their behavior, you'll realize that you can't possibly know what was actually the reason. And we often fool ourselves and we explain away other people's behavior, but we don't really know. So curiosity opens up our awareness that there could be all sorts of other things that we don't know about going on for that person, and to open our mind to the fact that they have made the best choice that was available to them at the time. So that's the first one, adopting a curious state and using your good, clean NLP questioning to ask what would have to be true. The next thing I want to talk about is looking at higher values, which I mentioned. And I've put this slide up because I want to talk a little bit of a story about this, because a lot of conflict takes place at a detailed level of specifics. Like the two mothers who disagree over whether or not they should pick up their children from university. Now, this picture is meant to represent the Northern Ireland conflict. And when that conflict was at its height, The disagreement was absolutely huge. The gulf between the two sides had existed for decades, and countless lives had been lost, and countless rounds of negotiation had attempted to find a peaceful solution to end hostilities, and countless rounds of negotiations had also failed. And basically both parties arrived at every negotiation with entrenched positions at the specific level. There's this grievance and this grievance and this grievance and this demand and this demand and this demand. Now, in the 1990s, a team of negotiators actually managed the seemingly impossible. They got the two sides to look at things differently. Now, one of the people who was instrumental in these talks was the late Mo Mowlam, who was the Northern Ireland Secretary at the time. And Mo Mowlam had studied NLP with the absolutely amazing master trainers Craig Wood and Dr. Susie Strang. And one of the techniques that Mowlam brought to the Northern Ireland peace talks was to move away from arguing about the specific differences and grievances. As she pointed out, you know, if you do the same thing over and over again, you'll get the same results. Why would you do that? Let's move away. And she started off by talking to each party separately, and she asked them a very simple question, but it had never been put that way. She asked them, obviously, what do you want? And they rehearsed the same old arguments. But she moved off that and she said, and what's important to you about that? And she listened. And then she asked them, and what's important to you about that? And she listened. And what's important to you about that? And some of you who've studied NLP might recognize these simple questions, apparently simple, but incredibly powerful, because each time you ask that question using the person's previous reply, you dig deeper into their core values. And she used her NLP training to explore the core values behind the specific requests and arguments on each side. And the two sides would never agree on the specifics. By asking what's important to you about that, and what's important to you about that, and what's important to you about that, as often as she needed to, she did it with each side independently and noted down everything she discovered. But she then had the privileged position to be able to see that at the higher level, they both had something in common. Again, I'm going to think about the two mothers again. The two mothers doing something completely different and arguing that each other's behavior was wrong. And yet they had something in common, didn't they? They both believed they were loving mothers, and being loving mothers was the highest value. So if those two mothers could meet on their common ground, we're both loving mothers, and then step back down to the specifics, but already having reached an understanding, you could get a really different result. And when Mo Mowlam found that common ground, she then asked the question, what's a different solution starting from the common ground? What is a different solution which both sides can agree on? Now, that was absolutely revolutionary. And then by working back down to a completely new set of specifics, that was the breakthrough which led to the Good Friday Agreement. And I actually get emotional when I'm telling this story. So I know about this because Susie Strang and Craig Wood taught Mo Mowlam and also taught me. I never met Mo Mowlam, but I know Susie and Craig very well. But what really makes it emotional to me is that I think in what's going on now, we're in danger of undermining that astonishing breakthrough bit of negotiation. And I think it comes down to those of us, NLPers and non-NLPers, but people who are willing to look for the common ground. You know, it's our time to do something different, I think. And when we go into the practice session in a moment, which we'll do very soon, this is the second route that I'll invite you to look at. Those of you who are experienced NLPers will be very familiar with the perceptual positions process, which uses different chairs to look at the different views. I'm offering a worksheet tonight which is based on that, but really focuses on the part of the process that explores the core values and really drills into the higher values for each party. Again, if you've got somebody with whom you disagree and you want to think about their core values, remembering that that person is not in the room, you're only ever going to be able to do it from your perception, but that in itself is curiosity, openness, and willingness to see things from someone else's view. So it can really get massive benefits. So I've probably, talked enough. I've outlined, 3 NLP aspects that I think are really useful. The beliefs of excellence, the 4 that I picked out. There are other beliefs are available. The question, what would have to be true, coming from a state of curiosity, and using highest values to look at your own and somebody else's point of view, and looking not at what's different between us, but what's at the highest value. I've got downloads in the portal for both of these exercises. Just looking, I think we're about to lose Emma. Is that right, Emma? Or you're going to lose you in about 4 or 5 minutes. So, so what I'll do is I'll just divide the rest of you into 2 breakout rooms, and Emma can include one and join out separately, and just decide amongst yourself, like, what is it you'd like to go through. I've got downloads in the learning portal, so where you came into the Zoom meeting from. There's one for each of them, and I've written them kind of like a script, so that if you are less experienced, you can literally just follow the script to coach your partner through the one they've chosen. If you're more experienced, obviously use your own experience and flexibility to adapt it.
At this point, the participants went into breakout rooms and worked in pairs. We don't record this because obviously they may be sharing some personal and sensitive information. So you might like to work through the exercises for yourself. You'll find all the handouts in the download section of our learning portal, and you could work through either or both of the exercises that we've provided. So either looking at what would have to be true for someone else to behave that way, thinking about someone who has maybe hurt you or that you've fallen out with, or doing the exercise where you can chunk up to discover the highest values that you and someone else that you're in conflict with have in common in order to find a different resolution. And when you've worked through the exercise, come back and join us for the remainder of this video.
Fab. So welcome back. It sounded like there was a lot of really interesting conversations going on. Is there anything anybody wants to share or reflect on that took place in your breakout rooms?
It was a really good exercise, like very powerful. That's for sure. Like the insights and clarity that you get from asking the questions. For sure.
Yeah.
Which exercise did you do, Michael?
It was the values one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't it insightful? It's just lovely. Yeah. Good.
I just wished he'd done that exercise, about 2 months ago or whatever,
Yeah.
and then you can get a perspective on things and maybe have asked the different questions. But the heat of the moment and the stress, hindsight's a wonderful thing, but but there is learning. There is learning.
Yeah.
Moira, you know what they say, the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The second best time to plant a tree is today.
There you go.
Very good point, Helen. Yeah.
Very nice,
apple
Helen.
tree.
Yeah.
Mm. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. Oh, very good. Very skillful.
That was excellent. It was very, thank you for letting me share that as well, but it was really well led and really well followed, and there were lots of stuff came out of that, wasn't there, Maria?
Yeah. Michael did a fantastic job. I unfortunately hugged the whole session.
Oh right. Okay.
It took the whole blooming session.
But everybody was learning.
Right,
So
yeah.
Well, as long as everybody got something from it.
I know.
Good. Okay.
And Valerie gave me a full session as well, so that was much appreciated.
All right.
Hopefully that was useful from your perspective as well, Valerie.
Oh yes, yeah. I think we were sort of we were doing the values one, but I sort of blending it in with going back to the curious question, what would have to be true in her world. So we did that bit a couple of times for the conflict, and then also use what would have to be true in her world for her to see the same goal as you've got, sort of thing. So again, just another way.
But I think it worked though, to be honest, by blending it through.
I really like that because obviously all of these tools are principles that can be woven together and add a fresh dimension. So I really like that when you're able to do that in a practice session, but you have such a, you clearly got a valuable benefit from it, Nigel, which is great. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, to me that's
the
power of NLP.
It was very interesting
watching. I
watching.
put it into practice tomorrow.
Yeah, good. Sorry, Helen, what was that?
I was just going to say that it was interesting watching it being done on Zoom, because I've only ever done that when we've been swapping chairs and standing outside the room peering in. So it was really interesting to see that you don't need those physical attributes. It can just be done visually in your own head. Yeah.
Yes, I think we're all learning actually to not see Zoom as a limitation, but actually can be incredibly flexible and variety and different ways of doing things. So yeah, I've tailored the script a little bit just to really encourage that you take on the different persona, you physically move a little bit to, even if you don't change chairs, and that just to remind people that you are being a different person, and that can really help to get into a different mindset and see things differently. Because a lot of intolerance and difference is because we are in a stuck mindset just as much as the other person. We're stuck in our own mindset, and sometimes with the whole brain and body are connected, a little bit of physicality can help you just to think differently and see differently, and Zoom needn't be a constriction for that. Yeah, good. Okay, well, I'm glad you had a good breakout session. I really enjoyed dropping in and eavesdropping. There seemed to be such a lot going on, so I'm glad for that.
Did you drop in on us? We blacked out at one point.
I dropped in on you 3 times. But I
didn't know.
I had my video and microphone switched off because it's less obtrusive that way.
I saw you coming in. What was your takeaways when you dropped in?
Oh gosh, well, I dropped in at one point when Valerie was doing that, moving between the values and the what would have to be true, and I really enjoyed that bit of flexibility. I thought that was super. And another bit I dropped in, there was a long thoughtful silence, and I think Valerie, did your connection drop or something?
We went black, our screen went blank, so I don't know what happened.
Okay, well, I hope I didn't cause that. So I dropped in at a point when technology was having fun, and then I dropped in towards the end when you were moving towards reflection, and clearly a lot had happened when I wasn't in the room, which I found fascinating. Nigel, your whole state had changed compared to what you were talking about early on to how you were talking later, and I love just watching that, and the the messages you were taking away and how you were looking at things
in a more positive, open way. Or
very much so. And you were talking about the impact on people around you and your loved ones, and you said the people who brought you supper, so I didn't know all the context, but you were talking about them being a beneficial, and it showed in your face.
It was when Valerie was sort of bringing me up to, so what does that get you for you type thing, and what and as that racked up, it's so what really is benefit, if you like, and
I think that question
all us around, really.
That question, what's important to you, when you really follow anything back to its source, it hits. I can't put it any better way. It hits what is really important to you, and you kind of pare away all the noise and the the stuff that is meaningless, and enables you to focus on what really, really matters. And I think that's hugely important. So it's a great, great opportunity to ask those questions. Good. Okay. We're finishing at 7:45, so I'm just going to invite you, would you like to do a brief compassion meditation? All you have to do is sit back and relax if you want to.
Sounds ideal.
Sounds ideal. So just a little bit of background. Some of you may have heard of it before. It's from Hawaiian huna, which is a very ancient belief system, and very effective. And one of the things in Hawaiian huna, for example, they don't have any concept or words for mental illness. Everything is just variations of normal. So there's a much more tolerant, accepting of differences, compassionate, respect for all different choices. I just used mental illness as one example, but absolutely, you take any range of human differences, and in Hawaiian huna, the whole culture is one of acceptance of differences, and in fact, valuing and appreciating. And what in their culture, they basically identify that any discomfort or dis-ease that arises always comes from within, that our connectedness to the outside world has somehow got blocked or polluted in some way. And so the Ho'oponopono meditation is for healing connections and relationships, but entirely from within. And Ho'oponopono is a Hawaiian word which means to make right, or to make things very right. And it's, as I say, it has parallels in all the world's major religions. There's a beautiful Buddhist meditation called Tonglen, which is very, very similar. There are Christian prayers that are very, very similar. Islamic prayers that are also very similar, and it's based on the 4 powerful emotions, which are remorse, forgiveness, gratitude, and love. And remorse, forgiveness, gratitude, and love can basically overpower all the toxic emotions like hatred and fear and anger. So for the Ho'oponopono meditation, I'm going to invite you to hold in your heart and in your mind's eye someone with whom you have a damaged or fractured relationship, someone who perhaps has hurt you or upsets you or disagrees with you. Just hold that person in your mind and just sit very grounded. You don't need, put down any pens or anything. Just sit in a really grounded way and relax and shut your eyes and hold that person in your heart and in your mind's eye. And I'm going to say the 4 phrases, and after I say each one, just repeat it inside your head and really feel the emotion, either remorse, forgiveness, gratitude, or love that goes with the phrase. So with that person in mind. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. And again, holding that person in mind, and just notice you may feel resistance at some of the sentences as you repeat them to yourself. And if you do feel resistance, then that's the one to spend a little bit longer on. Keep repeating it and just absolutely feel it with your whole heart and mind. So holding that person in your mind, in your mind's eye and in your heart, and repeat each sentence after me. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. And again, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. And again, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. And notice as you repeat the meditation or reflection, how the resistance begins to melt when you truly feel those emotions of remorse, forgiveness, gratitude, and love. And what I really encourage you, these 4 phrases, you can repeat them at any time. They have a great impact on state. If we put an NLP perspective on, these 4 emotions release the healthy hormones and brain chemicals. They create a much more resourceful state. And there's something you can practice with conflicted relationships. Hold that person in mind. You can practice it with relationships of someone you love. You can think about the entire planet, if you like. And last but not least, what about if you say those things to yourself?
I was going to just suggest that.
Yeah. So I'm going to invite you to hold yourself in your heart and your mind's eye. And again, repeat those same reflections, thinking about yourself. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. I hope you enjoyed a quick little Ho'oponopono meditation, and it's a nice way to end the evening in a good state. Can I invite just a quick round? What have you taken away from tonight? What did you enjoy the most? Anybody like to share something?
Well, you're not going to believe this, but the person that I was thinking about, we didn't argue, but I felt I was a bit disingenuous about her beliefs and her take on COVID, and I felt that I hadn't handled that very well. She has she's just messaged me and said, really enjoyed our time together. Let's have another coffee and let's have another chat. That is bizarre.
That is something going on there, isn't it?
Right?
That is something going on.
Oh, I think the universe is speaking. Wow. Whoops. Sorry, I've just...
We didn't argue. I just felt I came away thinking, wow, you've given me some new things to think about, and I maybe didn't handle that very well. Yeah. That's actually taken my breath away.
That's just lovely. That's absolutely lovely.
Oh, and the one thing
it is possible. With our thoughts, we can change the world.
And I'm not sure if you noticed, Maria, but when Michael took you down through and what does that mean? And when you came to the final one about growth, your entire state completely changed. It just was like, yeah, there was a big, I noticed maybe as well as
that's
you can
really good. Thank you. Yeah. Oh, brilliant. Okay, thank you.
That's lovely. What lovely feedback, Helen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Super. Anything else?
I really enjoyed that. It was nice to be back in the Grapevine learning, and it was good. I took quite a lot away. I enjoyed doing the coaching with Maria, and even some of the frames, like the Be Curious frame, rather than like I never knew how like that change, like changing from be curious from a defensive mindset completely takes away that the feelings of defensiveness and fear. If you just be curious,
Yeah,
like that, I never knew it was the opposite.
Yeah.
So it was a big takeaway, which
and I think it's easier to be curious than to jump straight to something like love, you know. But it's just a lot, if a lot's getting in the way, but being curious, I think, is an easier sort of stepping stone. And you're right, it really makes a difference. And gosh, I could do a whole grapevine on curiosity. I was doing some work around pain, like physical pain, and how curiosity can really change your relationship with physical pain, which is fascinating. So yeah, so just that alone is a useful resource.
Yeah,
definitely.
That's quite a good opening, though. If somebody says something that you don't agree with, to start off by saying, oh, that's interesting. I'm curious to know how you've come to that thought.
Yeah. Much better than saying, I disagree. Yeah.
Yes.
Far more opening.
Or the, why do you think that? You've got the why and the intonation and everything else that goes along with it, and it's...
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. No, I just want to say thank you. I want to say thank you to Michael, because he took his time this evening, and I'm glad he's got some stuff out of that, but thanks to his time, that was brilliant. Thank you.
Well, I'm glad you've all enjoyed it. I'd be very grateful, as always, if you would leave a review. Other people find it helpful to know what you've taken away. I've just popped a link into the chat box, which should take you straight through to the place in the learning portal where you can leave a review, just to make it as easy as possible. And so all it remains for me to do is just to tell you what next week's no, not next week, next month, which will be the last Grapevine of the year. However, I haven't set a topic, so I throw it open to you, those of you that are live, and I'll invite people who are watching the recording as well to send me suggestions. But is there any topic you would like me to cover for the last Grapevine of the year? Either let me know now or send me a message afterwards, and I will take whichever suggestion either most people ask for or the one that takes my fancy. But if there's any ideas you've already got, just give me a shout. That'd be brilliant.
Okay, thank you.
It's on the last Thursday, 6 as always. What was that? Sorry, Michael.
Slight your mouth techniques.
Oh, slight your mouth. Oh, that's a good one. Yeah.
I never got my head around that one properly.
Different.
Oh, I can have some great fun with sleight of mouth. Yeah, it can be good fun.
All right. Yeah, that's good.
I just want to end the night by saying, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, and I love you all very much.
Thanks, Madeline.
Take care, everyone. Virtual hugs.
Lovely to be connected.
Yeah, have a lovely evening. Bye.